After growing my salary from 30K to 80K in the last 5 years, I've learned something that most leaders miss. It all rests on the fact that it's normal for your salary to be unfair at different points in your career and throughout the year. And I'll unpack that a little bit more so that makes sense. If you're an ambitious, high potential person and you're growing your abilities and skills like this, you're constantly improving and growing, you don't stop, then there's no way for your business to keep up with you because it increases your salary once per year. So you're kind of flat, increase in salary, flat, increase in salary. So if you're growing and learning really quickly, it can't keep up with you. It might do it twice per year, in which case it's flat one like that. But you're still going to have these points where your business can't keep up with your growth, where it's not going to be able to provide you with a salary that is like fair in inverted commas. But that's normal. That's absolutely normal. You've got to get used to that. But what's absolutely critical is if you think about the business, it's incentivized to keep your salary as low as possible, to keep its profit margins up as high as possible, while having you continue to do the same job at the same level of ability, or even to give you the same salary for you doing a better job. Like it would rather do that as an entity if it could. So the pressure on your salary is downwards from the business profits, which means you have to be an equal and opposite force upwards to counteract that. And so that's why this video is so important, because if you don't understand when your salary is unfair and what is fair, then that downwards pressure from the business will keep you down and keep your salary down when those pay reviews do come. And remember, you've got to make sure that you catch up with your growth when you get that pay review. So that's what this video is all about. It's all about how to make sure you know when it's unfair and what is fair so that you can catch up with your growth when the pay reviews come around. And I've been there over the past 5 years or so, multiple times, as you can imagine. I've had quite a few raises in that period. And there's been a bunch of points where I've been like, oh shit, my growth is so much higher than what my salary is now. But then I went through this process, took the steps forward, found out, why am I unfair? Can I check that I'm definitely unfair and be certain? And there is a way of doing that, and I'm going to come on to that. And then once I know I'm certain, what is fair? And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to ask for that. I'm going to make sure that I get to the right level of salary, and it worked every time. But you've got to follow the process, and that's what I'm going to give you today. At least the first step of how to understand if your salary is unfair. So the business isn't going to do it for you. You've got to take this on your own shoulders. If you miss out on those opportunities of growth, you'll have to wait another year for the most part. So you do not want to miss. You get one shot per year to increase your salary, so you do not want to miss it. If you miss it, you hold yourself back from that growth that you would have had, and you're going to have to try and either double the growth next time, or you're just going to miss out on that raise. And if you think about that raise compounded over your life, say you're going to get a 5K raise, and instead you got the 5K raise a year later, you could have got another 5K on top of it at that point. So if you think about it across your life, that's 5K times how many years you're going to be working in your career. So you could be talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds missed out just by missing one raise opportunity. So that's why this is a critical foundational step to the whole process of getting a high salary. So let's dig into it a bit deeper and talk a bit about the process that I would follow. So first up, I like to start with something super simple. So how much do you think you're worth? This is what I would always ask myself first. Before I go into any deep analysis or anything like that, what do you think you're worth? And what does your gut tell you? I always think about that. What do you want to be on next? And write down that number so that you've got a good idea of what it is. So maybe it's 60K, 70K, 40K, 30, whatever it is. Write down what the number is. Doesn't have to be a multiple of 10. I just threw out a few numbers there. Write down that gut feel. That's going to be your anchoring starting point. Then you're going to have a think about, as a second step, what is your value to the business and to your manager? That's the kind of next thing you've got to ask yourself. And there's a few ways that you can work this out. The first way is through return on investment. So return on investment is the best possible metric you can use to justify that you need a higher salary, because you essentially can prove to the business that the return on the investment in your role is worth the money. So if you can prove that you're making 3 times the amount of money that your salary brings in, kind of a no-brainer to give you a raise, because you've proven that you've brought in that extra cash. And you can do it in a few ways. You can either bring additional revenue into the business it could be through direct sales, or it could be through some improvement in a metric which drives revenue through a customer, more customers buying or something like that. It could be anything that impacts customer outcomes can be a revenue driver. So even if you're in kind of maybe a customer operations team and you do an amazing job of dealing with customer complaints, and then you reduce the amount of times that the customers who complain end up leaving the business. In those cases, you could say that maybe you save 100 customers per year and each customer is worth £100. Then there you go, you've saved £10,000 for the business per year. That gives you kind of an idea of the type of way that you would do it. So that's kind of return in terms of revenue, and then you can also do it in cost savings. So efficiencies that you've created, where you've come in under budget, how have you been able to save money versus what the business would have been spending without what you've done. So you add together the revenues that you've driven and the costs that you've saved, and that gives a total return. And then you divide it by your salary, and that gives you the return on investment number. So ideally you get a really strong return on investment number, and that'd be your best metric. And if you see that pushing up into the times 2, times 3, times 4, times 5, then you're in a really good spot for a chunky raise. So if you're getting up to like times 3, times 4, times 5, then you should be asking for at least 20% raise. So that's going to help you a lot, understanding return on investment. And then you want to kind of ask yourself how critical your role is to the business and to your manager. Are you like an ultra specialist? Do you have knowledge that nobody else has? Do you run a process that nobody else knows how to do? Are you the only person in your function? These types of questions, like what would happen if you left? Would it be a big issue for the business or not? And the more critical that you are, the more you make your manager's life easier, the more pain that it would be for the business and for your manager if you left, then the more value that you can command, and the more the more power that you have in a negotiation scenario, and the more value that your role is. So you can start to understand from that whether you're being paid fairly relative to other roles. And we'll get onto the relativity point in a minute. And then the final point is and this is still all on your value to the business and your manager. The final point within that is, what kind of feedback are you getting? Are you getting glowing reviews from your peers? And does your manager's manager know about you, and have they given you feedback? Have you been able to act on feedback that you've been given? Like, how much evidence do you have that your role is super valuable, that you're doing a great job? The more that you have, the more evident, especially compared to others, if you're a standout, the more evidence that you have that you should be paid more and that your salary is unfair. And then the final one, which is kind of the most basic way to find out if your salary is unfair, is benchmarking. So the way benchmarking works is there are two sides to it. There's internal benchmarking and external benchmarking. You can either look at the salaries of people internally. You can get those either by asking people, but obviously you've got to be really polite and discretionary and be very clear and upfront about what you're going to use their salary for, if that's the case. You can also get them from public job descriptions, which some companies have, some don't. If you can't get internal ones, though, it's fine. Instead, you're going to do then external. And you're going to do both anyway, but external is pretty simple. You're going to Google your role, usually in the location that you're in, and then you go and salary. So it might be like marketing manager salary, London. And then you're going to have a look at a bunch of different websites and look at the kind of ranges that are being paid for that role. And if you're a particularly experienced person, maybe you've had 10 years experience, for example, then you should probably be paid at the top level of your role, and maybe you should be pushing for a promotion. So maybe your salary is starting to get a bit unfair if you're not at that top band. If you are pretty junior, then you should probably be close to the bottom band. If you're seeing a range when you type it in on Google, like some site like Glassdoor, for example. And that's a way that you can kind of triangulate the fairness of your salary. So kind of like that's a first summary of the three areas. So try and bring it all together now. So you've got gut feel, how much do you think that you're worth? And you've written down. You've got what's your value to the business and your ROI? Can you demonstrate clear revenue you've brought in or costs you've saved? It's fine if you can't. You can still find out if your salary is fair or unfair without it. But the more that you've brought in and the more costs you've saved, the more likely it is that your salary is unfair and that you should be paid more. Okay? So that ROI calculation is really helpful. How critical are you to the business? If you're super niche, specialist, critical, it would be a massive pain if you left. Then you should be commanding a higher salary, and it's more likely that your salary is unfair. If you're getting glowing feedback from the people around you, you're smashing all your metrics, then it's more likely that your salary is unfair, especially in relationship to your peers. And finally, the most simple way to understand, can you get a salary of someone in a similar role in the business, in a similar position in your business? That's the perfect example of being able to find out if it's anywhere on the unfair spectrum, because it brings into account all of the factors within your business. Every business has a bit of a different rate that they pay for a role. Some pay below market rate, some pay above. So if you can get within your business, it factors in the business dynamic as well. So if you can get that, great. If that's paid below yours, you're probably paid pretty well, potentially, but you've got to bring all the other factors in as well. If it's paid above yours, then maybe you're paid unfairly. And then you're going to do the external benchmarking as well. And you're going to find out whether other roles, other similar roles in similar sized companies in similar locations are paid, what kind of range is being paid for those. And that'll help you to triangulate. So you should end up with a bunch of numbers that you've written down, and you're going to try and triangulate them all together, and they should start to converge on. You should be able to start to converge on a type of salary which you think is about the right salary based on external benchmarking, internal benchmarking, what your gut feel was, how valuable you are to the business, how much revenue have you added, how much cost have you saved. Adding all of these things up together should start to make it clearer and clearer how much you should be paid. And what I would suggest you do is you sort of merge all of that information and come up with a final number. There's no like strict process of how to do that. Like come up with a final number and write that one down and then compare it to your salary. Is that higher or lower than your salary? If it's higher, then you're almost certainly underpaid. If it's lower, then maybe you're not underpaid. But if you do still want a higher salary, there are ways to go about and do that. You probably need to start thinking about promotions. If you're paid higher than your current, than maybe what the current market rate is, maybe what you should be doing then is thinking about how am I going to get promoted, because promotion is one of the best ways to get a raise, or looking into your performance. How can you do even more to boost your value to the business so that next time around that you've got an even stronger case, and that you're trying to shoot past what the fair salary is. So if we've worked out the fair salary here, what you want to do is add so much value to the business, either through your work or by getting promoted into a role that adds more value, that you shoot past that fair point. So you kind of grow past it. So if the fair point's ahead of you, you've got to grow and push and get promoted, improve your skills so that next time it's clear that it is unfair. So that's kind of summary of that whole process. I'll kind of go one more time. So how much do you think you're worth? Gut feel, value to the business and your manager in terms of ROI, how critical you are, how specialist you are, and then the feedback that you get. And then benchmarking, internal, external, 3 steps. Merge all that together, come up with a final number. Is it higher or lower than your salary? Okay? That's how you find out for certain if your salary is unfair or fair. And thanks so much for watching. If you found it helpful, leave a comment below. Let me know what salary you came up with and how it compares to your salary. I'd love to know. And yeah, please just don't settle for less than you're worth, and subscribe to subscribe for more videos on how to grow your salary if you're interested in the content. And if you do want to go that one step further, you can join our super ambitious community of aspiring future leaders by hitting the link in the description and joining our newsletter, which sends weekly on every Sunday. Thanks again for watching.